Research that brings important questions into the public conversation, helping policymakers and voters understand what's important in Utah, and leadership that takes those issues into the public sphere. How much of that is Steve Kroes responsible for in his leadership of the Utah Foundation? Well, as Steve might put it on another question, more than all of it.
The nonpartisan orientation is critically important, and Steve has always been true to that. He really wants to make sure that the issues are looked at objectively and that all the information is presented and that the research is done in a way that is credible and is trustworthy and produce results that will make a difference.
It's an important organization. It's one we need to support. It's one that we need to include in meetings like that where we're thinking about policy, we're thinking about taxes, we're thinking about Utah. We need people in that room who are objective and have data and are willing to share very candidly with our leaders what they know.
You know that they have skin in the information game, but they don't have skin in trying to push policy one direction or another. And the fact that they are strictly nonpartisan, I think, is exceptionally rare in our day and age and makes them even more valuable.
The Utah Foundation had always been useful in terms of raising issues that maybe were not raised other places. And then probably more importantly, in terms of providing in-depth background on issues that, because of its reputation and because of the trust that it had developed, it tended then to be referenced frequently in the discussions and debates.
It provides, with as little bias as I think is possible, the kind of information that those serving in public office critically need to do their jobs well.
One of the sort of tips I got when I very first ran for office, some folks who were sort of helping me get the lay of the land of, where people were on issues and some background really that was going to be helpful for me in running for office was, they said, you've got to check out this group, Utah Foundation. They have great information and it will really help you sound smart.
Utah Foundation has become one of those incredible assets that most of us take for granted. I actually got to know Utah Foundation back in 1988 when I was elected to Utah State Senate and had no idea who they were or what they were. And then I started reading a lot of the reports that they had done over a period of time and just have gained such rich respect, both because of the quality of what they did, but also the messages that it carried. Giving people an opportunity to make decisions that are information-based, and that's a pretty good thing to base decisions on.
It has been nice to have an organization that does some policy work, some research-based policy work. In fact, database decision-making and database policy-making is really the direction that I think we need to go to have greater success in all that we do, whether it's education or other policy areas. And so since my first days on the State Board of Education, I've been very interested in and appreciative of the work of the Utah Foundation.
Whether it's policymakers or voters or community organizations that are seeking to improve the quality of life in Utah, that information and research that you can rely on as absolutely solid helps everybody be on the same page. Then we end up having the right conversation about what we should do, not the wrong conversation about which facts we want to work from.
Hi, I'm Dan Bomas. I'm the Communications Director for Utah Foundation. We have enjoyed working with Steve Kroes over the years that he's been here, both inside and outside of the organization. He's been a delight to work with, and since I've joined, a great friend and mentor to me. We just can't say enough about Steve Kroes and what he's meant to Utah Foundation, and so we've asked some of our best friends to share their thoughts on what he's done.
Steve is a really good analyst and economist, and someone who brought a lot of energy and focus to the Utah Foundation.
It was really fun to see his excitement and his ambition as to what to do with this. He, I think, well understood the history and wanted to protect that history and the reputation, but he was also quick to look for ways for broader kind of public engagement.
The fact that Steve has a leadership style that really gives the people who work for him a lot of latitude to pursue their research, and that makes him a great partner to work with for the Walker Institute as well. So he's been a really great friend and a great friend for the Walker Institute in helping us raise our profile and understand what the issues are that we should be pursuing.
So Steve, who is a policy wonk, became a leader in terms of working with the board to develop a vision and a strategy for the organization, to thinking through the resources that it would take to deliver on that vision, and being able to really accelerate the work in terms of fundraising and resource building that would allow us to accomplish that. So he's been a tremendous leader for this organization.
I think that we need more people like Steve who can be very, very gracious and very, very smart, but can not sugarcoat things, right? That can say things in a way that we really need to hear them, and we need good data to support them, and then he needs to kind of urge us on to make decisions as Utahns. I really appreciate that about him, and I'll miss that voice.
I always appreciated our morning breakfast. We'd get together occasionally at Neaters and just kind of talk about policy issues in the state and other things like that, and agree on some things and debate other things and stuff. And I always appreciated those, personal get-togethers with Steve. Probably one of the things that most folks will appreciate is it was actually Steve who came to me when I ran for state auditor and said, "We've called you Frugal Dougal for years. You're going to think it's goofy, but you should use that on your campaign." And lo and behold, I went out there for county conventions and I did A/B testing. At some conventions I'd end with John Dougal and people would forget my name. And at other ones I'd end my speech with Frugal Dougal and they almost always remembered my name.
He's able to sort of step above the political jockeying or self-protectionism that sometimes you see, even unwittingly in different committees, or in this case the Education Commission, and say, here's what our analysis shows us, and you do with that information what you will, but here's the indisputable facts, and people listen when he talks.
One of the things I've really appreciated about Steve is that he, even though he may be a little wonky when it comes to numbers and research and analysis, he is able to interpret those findings into everyday language, into things that volunteer board members or volunteer committee members can understand, and things that especially that I can understand.
Steve came along at a time that we were looking very seriously at infrastructure. The Salt Lake Chamber has carried some great initiatives that wouldn't have been possible without the input, without the information, and in my personal standpoint, the personal discussions that I was able to have with Steve. A report is one thing, but then when you can sit down with confidence and talk to an individual that actually has the knowledge, that you can ferret out even more information from, it's very valuable.
Steve is just a great human being, and as I got to know him, I think we became friends, and it was just always clear that he's just a down-to-earth, thoughtful, really bright person who was bringing his goodness as a human being to really good work on behalf of the citizens of Utah. And I think we're fortunate that Steve has played this role for as long as he has. I think it's sad to see him go. We'll miss him, but he's left a good solid foundation here at the Utah Foundation, I think.